G'day, gorgeous. How are you? So I'm back to do the second episode in this little series of videos that impromptuly came to the surface when my dad died at the end of January, called On Death and Dying with yours truly, Jacquie McIntyre. And I just want to say quickly, thank you so much for all the video responses that I got from the first one. There were some really great questions in there, and I'm going to answer those today. And again, thank you for the condolences and the beautiful wishes that you sent through. I really, truly appreciate it. And it was also really wonderful to hear of the different people who also had a very similar feeling, and their viewpoints were very much the same as my own experience, and that when we die, our consciousness, which never ends, we're all consciousness, it continues on. And so we don't truly die and cease to be. We simply shift from one state of being to another. So if you haven't watched the first video yet, I would suggest you just go check that out, because they will be a continuation on each other. And I also want to make sure that I get all of your answers in these videos. So there probably is going to be a third follow-up video, and then that might bring the series to a little bit of a close. Now, there was a few questions that came in around animals and their process of death and dying. So I wanted to throw it out there ahead of time and let you know that at some point in time in the next few months, I'm going to be doing a whole series of videos just looking at the animal kingdom, right? So from a perspective of their health and what's really going on with their health and their healing process, and why and how they heal so differently to us and how they heal so quickly. Animal communication, animals taking on, especially domesticated animals, taking on our illnesses and our issues and our disease processes, animal consciousness, did I mention that? So whatever questions, no matter how illogical or ridiculous or weird of a concept you think that it is, I want to encourage you to put it in writing, send it through to the office, because I don't regard any question as being a silly question, and I will find a way to be able to answer that for you. We have so much to learn from the animal kingdom, like as a species, to help us grow the hell up and to help us find some emotional wisdom and really evolve. I think our viewpoint of us taming them and us just having them as companions on the planet or pets or whatever like that is a little bit rudimentary, for want of a better word. And we're really shifting focus now, and our awareness is changing, where we're beginning to understand that animals are wisdom keepers, and they bring to this planet an enormous amount of information that they can share with us that actually help us to grow and evolve, our conscious awareness to grow and evolve, and so that we can become better functioning human beings, not just to ourselves, but to each other. So if you have any questions about animals or body talk sessions for animals, because that's been one of my specialty areas over the past 18 to 20 years, then go for it, send that in. So that leads me to jumping in and answering some of the questions. And as we go through, it's going to give rise to me sharing a little bit more of what my experience was when my dad recently died at the end of January, because the whole experience itself was actually quite remarkable in a lot of different ways. And it has taught me much, and I continue to still reflect and learn from the experience. And I feel like that this is what these experiences give us the opportunity to do, is really to learn and grow, as you'll see, because I'm going to talk about it a little bit as we go through here. Okay, then. So the first question comes from one of our lovely human beings here in Australia. And I'm going to read a part of her question that comes out. So it's in relation to euthanizing pets. She says that it seems like that's what we do when they are too old and sick, when animals are too old and sick, is that we have the ability to step in with some euthanasia. And she says here it stops them suffering and prevents us from having to watch them suffer. How can we know when it's the right time to make a call like that is the first question. And how can we know what the animal wants is their second question. And does it actually shortcut their process? Let me answer the last question first. Does it shortcut their process? If you intervene and help them to transition, no, it doesn't. Because the way in which you and I and animals are going to be born into this world, what our birth story is what we've already pre-chosen from a soul perspective. Our consciousness has already chosen to have that experience. So it's the same as when we leave, when we transition out of our non-physical bodies into when we transition out of our physical bodies into our non-physical bodies. That's something that we've decided long before coming into this animal or human experience. So if you end up being part of that story, where you are able to help an animal transition through the help of a veterinarian, or even if it's just giving comfort to an animal, because quite often that helps them to transition. I have tapped out Cordyceps technique for many animals over the years whilst they're being in the process of transitioning. So for those of you that don't know, the Cordyceps technique is a very simple but highly effective brain balancing technique. And as I've said, I've used that Cordyceps technique several times on birds, different wildlife, dogs, as they're in the transitioning process. And it can be very, very effective in helping to bring the body out of shock, out of any kind of fear that it might be experiencing because of maybe they got mauled by a dog, maybe they get caught up in a barbed wire fence, whatever it is. The body can be in shock and in a little bit of fear. So that cortices helps them to process what's happening and helps them to be able to let go easily. So then that was a pre-decided, that was an agreement that I made at the soul level to be part of that experience and to accompany that animal on that journey. So you won't be cutting an animal's journey short. That will be something that's already been made in agreement by all relevant parties, and it will be absolutely perfect, right? Nothing happens the way it should never happen, right? Does that make sense? Did I say that in the right way? Okay, the next question is, how can we know when it's the right time to make a call like that? My suggestion, I think, is going to be one of the best suggestions that I can give you because I find it's the most effective. For those of you that have animals in your life, you probably on some level will superficially be communicating with them. We do have the ability to communicate with them far more clearly, effectively than you could even imagine. I promise you that. So I want you to, first of all, realize that, then use your communication skills that you have to communicate with your animal. What I did, and I'm going to give you an example. I had a neo-mastiff many years ago. Her name was Bounce. She was huge and she was beautiful, and she was basically like my nanny when my kids were babies growing up. She mothered my kids like nothing else. So she grew up with my kids and lived to a very old, ripe age of 16 years old for a neo-mastiff. And as she was getting older in her years, and I could feel that she was starting to wind down, it popped into my mind one day, how are you going to know if she wants to leave and she needs help with leaving, right? Because animals do not have the attachment to their physical body that we have as humans. They're non-attached. They know with absolute clarity. They have an inner knowing of what this process is that they're in. They have a knowing of what it looks like on the other side of that. So they understand that they're shifting and transitioning from physical into non-physical. For them, it's such an easy, beautiful process. And yes, there can be struggles that happen because each of them take their own individual journeys, and every human being plays a role in that, and that can be a real struggle for the human beings. But the animal does not struggle with vanity or with holding on to their physical body. They truly understand at depths that majority of humans don't, that everything is consciousness, that they are consciousness, that this is not the end, it's a continuation of their consciousness observing itself and expressing itself as a different form of consciousness afterwards. And quite often they are so willing and so ready and so able to just move on. It's us that really usually has that issue. It's us that struggles with that and doesn't want them to go. And I completely get it. I completely get it, right? Because the animals are the ones that on the planet are the ones that hold this consciousness of universal love or consciousness of love. I mean, plants and animals and minerals, sorry, plants and the earth and minerals and rocks and streams and water, they all hold the consciousness of love, which is the natural consciousness of the entire fabric of the universe. It's the thing that holds and brings everything into balance. It's our most natural state of being, this natural consciousness of love. Animals not only know what this consciousness of love is, but they are that. And so when an animal gets ready to die or they are dying, that's why it feels so huge. And oftentimes people will feel grief more deeply with animals than they even do with human beings. And it's because they have just loved you unconditionally, no conditions on that whatsoever, just loved you. And that's one of the reasons why they're showing up for us. This is one of the things that they're trying to help us with, is to help guide us in this learning process of how we learn unconditional love. So yeah, it can be a really hard process for us to get. But what I did with my neo-mastiff was I had a conversation with her. And it wasn't just a conversation where I'm talking out loud to her, because it was, but it was also a conversation that I had in my mind's eye. And this is very important, because what it is that you're focusing on in your mind's eye and imagining, that's what they see. They can see that, they pick that up as intercellular communication, right? So it's communication that is exchanged through consciousness, and they understand that, and they're picking up information from that. So if I'm having a conversation with her, but then I'm also thinking about what I've got to pull out of the freezer to make for dinner, or I'm thinking about the conversation I had on the phone with somebody, that's conflicting information. And also I'm not being present to this process that I'm going through with her. So it really teaches us to be very present. So bring all your awareness, engage as much of your five senses as you can when you're having these conversations. And I thought about, what are the things that that she could do that would make it so abundantly clear to me that she's just ready to leave and she needs help in doing that. Being a neo-mastiff, she loved her food, and I mean inhaled her food, never rejected food, loved water, and hence her name Bounce. She used to bounce around like a drafting horse. She would just bounce around. And so I thought, what if the day comes and she totally refuses food and doesn't want any food whatsoever, like's gone off food, she won't drink water, and she's lost, use of her legs, like she just won't stand up, she refuses to move. That would be my sign. That would be a very clear sign that she could send me to actually say, I'm ready, thanks. So that's really what I said to her in a conversation. I said, look, I need to know really clearly. So if you ever need my help in transitioning, I'll support you in that, but I need you to let me know really clearly. So on the morning that I wake up, it would mean that you are not eating, not drinking at all, total refusal, and that you are not wanting to get up. You cannot get up. You are lethargic. You're clearly showing me this is it. I'm ready to leave. Thank you very much. And I think I had that conversation with her first at around about the age of 11 or 12. And when I very first started to notice that she'd shifted into a different cycle of now kind of going into an older age, yeah, and I could feel some very, very slight contraction. So that's the first conversation I had with her, and I had that same conversation with her quite a few times over the years after that. And the day came where I woke up, and that's exactly what she did. She went off of food. She would not drink. She had no use of her limbs. She did not want to get up. She was very, very clearly ready to leave. And even the kids said to me, she's ready to leave. So what I find is that they have this willingness to move on because they're not attached to needing to stay. They're not attached to their body. They're just ready to move on. And I have met animals that actually have such a non-attachment to their body, and they feel like that they want to move on and do other things or become other things, is that they will put themselves into situations where they will force your hand on that. And I have seen that happen in quite a few situations, most notably to horses. So that's that. How can we know what the animal wants? I kind of just answered that in the previous response, but what I would like to add to that is when we're advocating for animals and we're needing to make these decisions, the absolute best thing that you can be armed with is your intuition system. Right. So for your intuition and your instincts to be working as best as they can be working. And the reason for that is because that's the information. Your intuition and instinctive systems are going to be picking up information, and enormous amounts of information, sensory information from the environment around you. And that, of course, will be the animal in your environment. And it will be picking up information, sifting it through your entire body-mind complex, and your intuition will be digesting and sorting that information. And then you'll be receiving that information as visions, as thoughts, as hearing, as a deep knowing. It comes in a lot of different ways, and it's slightly different for people depending on how you're wired and a few different factors. So it is 100% possible to be able to receive very clear information through these systems that are naturally part of you, to know with absolute certainty, this is what they want. Let's go ahead and organize that. So that might be staying at home in the comfort with you while they go through a 4-day transition process. It might be not taking me to the vet today, but please take me to the vet on Friday and I'll be ready by then. Okay. So find ways now, start today, that you can start to learn about your intuitive system. Please be picky who you learn information off. There is an enormous amount of charlatans out there on the interwebs right now because we're in this process of change and things are a bit chaotic. And it's a very good time for opportunistic people who don't have a whole lot of integrity. So use your gut instincts when you go searching for people. And if somebody feels good in here, then stick with it for as long as it feels good and then move on when it doesn't. But that would be my biggest suggestion. And it's not just to apply it to animals. Your intuition should be something that you are using all day, every day to filter the world around you, to interpret the things that you're picking up on around you, to help you make your decisions, to know what's right for you, to, oh gosh, it's so much. It's so much. And people have been starved and become almost, what's the word, amnesic to knowing that they innately have this enormous intuition system and what it's meant to do for them. So that would be my huge suggestion for that. That way you can know what the animal wants, because that's how they're trying to communicate with you right now. Speaking of which, I was sent a photo by a family member. It's my brother. And my brother and my dad are extremely good friends, very, very close, because of the close proximity that they lived with each other. They saw and talked to each other many, many, many times a day. And they kind of they have a share dog. It's really my brother's dog, but she spends a lot of time, or spent a lot of time with my dad. And I got sent a photo by my brother of his dog, and she's a Labrador cross golden retriever. She's a gorgeous little thing. And my dad is sitting in his dad chair in the lounge room, and he's watching something on TV. And here's this dog sitting in front of him at his feet and his knees, and she's just like burning holes. She's staring so hard, she's burning holes into his soul. And I got sent this photo and it struck me. It actually caught my breath and struck me. And the first thought was, oh my goodness, what is she trying to tell him? Like, there's a real urgency to the energy that comes through that photo. There's a real urgency on the look of her face. Like, she's desperately trying to connect with him. She's desperately trying to say something to him, and that she wished that he could hear her and that he could understand her. And it wasn't until my intuitive feeling was, she thinks that something's wrong. Something's really wrong. She's picking up on things that are shifting and changing. And I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't know this until after Dad had died, and when I was talking to my brother and that photo came up, and he said that in that moment when they took the photo and the dog was standing there just staring at him constantly for like, it was a long time. And apparently she followed him around like a shadow for days. That it was actually my dad that said, I think she's trying to tell me that something's wrong. She thinks that there's something wrong with me. So even he intuitively picked up on that. And I really come to know since Dad had died that he was actually a massive intuitive, and he was a massive creative. And I don't think he really showed that and expressed that. And I don't think a lot of people actually knew that about him. But that has since come to light, is that he was a massive intuitive and a very, very highly, highly functioning creative person. And yeah, it's just so interesting. So that's what I wanted to add about that. I also wanted to add that animals will sense when they are dying. Quite often animals know weeks and even months in advance before they are dying. And they can also sense when a person is dying. And this is probably something that's a little bit more commonly known. You might have heard about there are facilities where cats will turn up and they will lay on the bed for a few hours or even up to a few days before somebody's transitioning. So cats in particular, because they're master healers, but all animals have the ability to know with absolute clarity that someone is going to be leaving. And quite often they'll change their behaviors in the lead up to that. So it's good to pay attention to that. And it's not that you can do anything or change that, but it's good to be observing that. Let's shift slightly to kids. So kids will often see non-physical people, and for years after they've actually transitioned. So we're talking about people that have transitioned from physicality into non-physicality. And this can be people that the kids have known, but what is really commonly coming up is that kids will say that they've been talking to grandparents or great aunts and uncles or great grandparents, and they'll use a name or a nickname that they used to go by. They will commonly describe what they look like. They'll pass on messages from these loved ones, and often it's really astounding to the person that they're sharing that information with. And what I hear commonly is the person will say, but the child or the baby, like that child wasn't even alive when that person was alive. How can that be? That can't be. So I think the mind struggles with that a little bit. It kind of thinks that, well, that grandparent or whoever it is would have to be alive at the same time for the child to be alive for them to know about the person. Or maybe they think that that's where they're drawing their information from. Oh, they know it was a grandparent because they knew the grandparent before the grandparent died. Kids are so highly in tune. They're very highly intuitive, and I was just going to say that the way that we react and what we say and what we do in these moments is very, very important here, because we have this ability to support them and to be able to offer support and resources to help them become masterful at using that system, right? Because the intuitive system is a gigantic system that runs through every single area of your body mind complex and communicates with universal consciousness. So we do have to become masterful at using this. We have to really know how to modulate it and how to work it, because we do have abilities to be able to work with it, and for it to it's not something that's just wild and free and we have no control over it. We absolutely do. So what I want to suggest is that you support them, hear them, listen to them, what they're saying, observe with the children, be curious about what it is that they are perceiving and picking up on. We definitely don't want to shut them down. That's how we end up, manifesting into adults who are not only scared of our own intuition or other people's intuition, thinking it's a phony, ridiculous thing. But what happens is that the mind tends to shut down and becomes fearful of what else is achievable via the intuition, or it will completely deny that even the intuition exists. That's what happens. So in my experience, we're also turning this around. I think we're really moving in a different direction with this as a human species. We're starting to tap into our instincts and intuition. We're starting to really understand what it is, and we're going to be able to use this in the most magnificent ways. In particular, when people are transitioning and dying, and then after their transition process, that will be a really quite a healing thing for us, I think, in our human species, because we'll come to know the death and dying process as something completely different to what we've been conditioned to think it is for the last however long. It's not something to fear at all. Yeah, I have seen a lot of time when parents freak out. So you might have a child that says, and my mum did this actually. Uh, 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 I saw a Indian lady standing behind my mum, and I said to my mum, "There's this beautiful Indian lady standing behind you," and she freaked out. And I just want to encourage us to remain really grounded and centered, and be curious to the information that's coming up. Um, Non-physical humans, so a human that no longer has their meat suit, are not harmful. They are not bad at all, full stop. So it seems to be, and I've come across this a few times, it's a very, very old rigid belief system that comes from a few different areas, is that when someone dies, that's it, they die, they go to a specific place, and that's not the case at all. Everyone has their own unique journey that they take after the death process. So that's not even a set in stone thing. And that if you do come across somebody who is in their non-physical state, that is a bad energy, or that's a bad thing. And that is not the case at all. So I just wanted to clear that up. They still have the characteristics, and often they're in this process of growing and evolving after they transition. As I said, it's slightly different for each individual. So, it's not one of those scenarios where we can say, this is absolutely what happens every single time after death and the process that everyone takes, because that's not it at all. All right. If you have a child, or anybody for that matter, that sees somebody who has passed over, and it doesn't matter whether it's somebody you know or not somebody you know, you can prompt and you can ask for uh, whatever it is that you're curious about. So does this person have any messages? What are their facial expressions telling you? And quite often a child will have a great sense of what that person's going through just from their facial expressions. So be calm and don't be pushing. All right. The more you push, the more it shuts down that whole connection that's streaming from that person's consciousness to that other person who's now non-physical and their consciousness. Yeah. Okay. Let's finish up on this. It's an important topic, and then I want to explain a couple of resources to you. So a a family matrix, I do a lot of work with family matrices, and a family matrix looks at the members of the family matrix, and that's the human members majority of the time. That's what we're looking at. We're working with the dynamics and the relationships, and working to create harmony and repair trauma and past experiences in a family matrix. So in a family matrix, you have a matriarchal holder and a patriarchal holder. And those two people hold and serve different roles in that matrix, but it's very important that you have them for the health and the overall balance of the family matrix. And quite often the patriarchal and matriarchal holders are the eldest or one of the eldest living members. So it might be a grandfather or a grandmother or great grandmother or whatever that is. What happens then when the great grandfather dies? Then what should happen is that the next natural best fit to hold that matrix holder position literally just slides into place, and naturally then takes on the role, the consciousness of patriarchal matrix holder. So it's not something on paper that anyone has to do. A person doesn't even really have to be consciously aware that they're uptaking that role. It's normally just a very natural process. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you might have somebody that actually is meant to be the best, most prioritized fit for that. But for some reason, they might be going through their own trauma and their own struggles, and they're not able to shift into that position. So as I said, it's not something that they physically do. It's something that their entire body mind complex, their consciousness, needs to shift into over a period of time. But if this person has got resistance to that, or they've got past traumas holding them back, or whatever it is, then they won't shift into that position, which means then that family matrix doesn't have a patriarchal matrix holder. So that can happen for the opposite side, where you don't have somebody appropriate. Like, what happens if there's no more females in the family? Then what the innate wisdom for that family matrix will want to do is find the best fit, the best role model, not role model, that's not the right word. It will want to find and resource the best person from a consciousness perspective that would be the best one to hold that role as matriarchal matrix holder. Mouthful. So this is what we achieve in the body talk session, is that if that struggles to work itself out for whatever reason, and that usually will identify itself in the weeks and months after somebody's transitioned, then we can help to actually achieve that and do that. And not only does it help stabilize the matrix holders, but it really helps the family matrix to change dynamically. So relationships will change. People will be able to go through letting go processes. It will bring relationships closer together. And if you're not sure on whether that's even an issue for your family matrix or not, you can always just get a session, we do a check-in, and we address anything that comes up in the family matrix anyway. And if there are no priorities around needing to make any changes to those matrix holders, then great, there's nothing that we need to do. But there will be other things that we can do in that family matrix. And it's usually around releasing and processing grief and helping relationships and communication to be stronger. So that's just something that we don't often think about as because it's not talked about, right? When somebody dies, quite often there are people that step forward and they say, right, I'm going to do this, and I'll do a list of this, and I'll contact this person. But just because people step forward and become the doers and the action takers doesn't actually mean that they are the best fit to be a matrix holder. It's all of your consciousness collectively that knows who and why is the best matrix holders. But as I said, it's very important for the longevity and the health of the entire family matrix. So that's something to think about. What I am going to be making available to you is 2 resources. The first one is an emotional, and I'm just going to shift them over here in front of me so I can talk to you a little bit about them, is an emotional will. The document that I'm going to give to you, I think you can really apply it no matter what area of the world that you live in, and you can take what is on this document and apply it as you need it. So an emotional will is more about your legacy. It's a way to share your thoughts, your values, lessons in life, your passions, hopes and dreams with your children, friends, and even future generations. And I love, 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 love this. So this is your chance to ensure that you don't leave this life experience with things left unsaid. Because an emotional will is not a legal document, you can be as creative as you like it to be. You can leave memories, thoughts, well wishes, drawings, notebooks, photos, videos, sound recordings. It's really up to you to how you do it. So that's a really, really great document. It's 2 pages long, and I'm going to make it available to you. The other one that I've got for you, and I'm just shifting that in front of me, it's your final checklist. And this helps you to get all your ducks in a row, so to speak. It helps you to know exactly what you want your inner life process to look like, depending on the scenario. Like, what if you do get the chance to go through a a transition process over the period of a few days or whatever. And you've got people interacting with you. You've got maybe a medical team looking after you. What do you want that to look like? Because you have the say, and it gives very clear instructions on what you want in your space, what you don't, what you would like brought to you, things that you feel like you would need. It reminds you if you need to have up a will, is it up to date? Do you have a power of attorney? So thinking about all the things in a lead up to a transition process, but then also thinking about the things that all then need to happen after you've transitioned. So for somebody who has just experienced their dad dying very recently, it was astonishing to me the amount of people that we needed to, not just friends and family, notify, but the amount of organizations and the amount of government institutions and all that kind of thing that we needed to have conversations with and documentation with, and what that needed to look like. And it was a lot of hoo-ha. And yes, a lot of it is unnecessary, but that's currently the way that it's structured. And I look forward to seeing it change and there'd be far less involvement from a lot of these organisations. I look forward to it being a much simpler process, but it isn't that right now. So you have the opportunity to kind of look at what would be all the things that need doing afterwards, and how easy do you want to make that on your loved ones? So for me, I actually want to tick as many boxes as I can, so that when my kids in particular are going through their own reconciliation of realizing that I've transitioned and I'm not physically around anymore, and they will be dealing with grief and they will be dealing with sadness, what kind of workload do I want to put onto them? What kind of list do I want to leave them with? And so I've decided I want that to be as least amount of heaviness as possible, because I burnt out after dad died, and there was myself and two siblings navigating this and doing this, but it was a full on running around process. And I think it was about a week later, I really hit the wall and just literally needed to lay on the grass and let the earth, swallow me. And that was really one of the learning experiences that I took away from this, is I have a lot of power to navigate this from my standpoint right now, so that when it comes time, is that it can be even somewhat of an enjoyable process for people on the other side of it, right? What did I want to mention about that? You might have a DNR in place. You might want to think about that. That was something that my dad had. My dad had a DNR in place, and I'll wrap up with this story. I do have other questions that came through, but I actually will put them in the next video, because now feels like a good place to stop, right? So I'll finish off with this recount of what happened with dad. His dad had found out about 4 months before he actually died. He had found out because he was having pain in his head when he bent forward. After repeatedly going to the doctor and then insisting on testing, it was found that he had a extremely large aneurysm in the center of his brain, so upwards around 13 centimeters, which then over the 4 months absolutely would have grown. And it was because of that they then he had a neurological team, an investigative team, and they did a bunch of scans to figure out what surgical process that they wanted to take. It was through these diagnostic processes that they discerned that they weren't going to be able to do any surgery. The majority of that reason was because all of the arteries on the left-hand side supplying the head were 100% blocked. And that the body, and this is a fascinating thing, right? The body had found creative ways to work around figuring out how we get blood supply to the brain. So this is what the body does, right? I've seen this so many times, is something gets locked, blocked, it stops working. And the innate wisdom says, let's find, we can't figure out how to fix this right now. Let's figure out a workaround, and the body compensates. And that's exactly what it had done and had been doing for quite a while. They knew that if they did surgery, not knowing exactly what the blockages were, that if they sent a catheter or a balloon up to try and reduce or take away the aneurysm, that it would result in something breaking off and then causing a massive stroke. So Dad had decided that he wanted a DNR, do not resuscitate, in place. He had no intention of wanting to stay on a respirator. He, in his words, didn't want to be kept as a vegetable or anything like that. And he had talked to us all about that, and we were very, very clear on what his wishes were. He did not want to be sitting in a hospital. He did not like those environments at all. And I mean at all. So 4 months passes, and Dad wakes up this morning and has some very, very slight neurological deficit, and is not able to move hands and so forth as he normally would freely. And so my brother took him to the hospital. He was admitted into the emergency ward. He was sitting in a cubicle. They took him in and gave him a CT scan of the head and neck, and I suppose it might have gone down a bit further. They had done that with a dye contrast because they wanted to see what all the arteries and everything look like, and how that dye was able to get through or not get through. And I actually talked to him on the phone after that happened for a good 10 minutes, and he was waiting for the report to come through and for the doctors to give their opinion on that report as to what was going on for him. And during that period of time, after I talked to him on the phone, and it was only within 10 minutes, the aneurysm hemorrhaged. And what resulted was what they call a thunderclap headache, which is very intense pain in the head. And what that essentially was a grade 4 hemorrhage. And when I was eventually told about 45 minutes later that it was a grade 4 hemorrhage, that's what the neurologist said, I knew straight away that this is then us saying goodbye to him, and this is him leaving physicality. And that helped me make some decisions very quickly on what I needed to do, because I knew then I was going to be staying for quite a while in Brisbane. So after the hemorrhage happened, the body seized. The body then was vomiting because it's a brain injury, it's a brain event. He then stopped breathing, so they then put him on some assisted breathing. And the neurologist had a conversation with one of our siblings. Our siblings then had like a roundtable conversation between us, and the neurologist said, look, once we take him off the breathing, assisted breathing, he will not be able to breathe on his own, and it will be just a few moments, and then he will die. And because we knew it was his wishes to not have assisted breathing, that was an easy decision for us, right? In one way, it's a hard decision because you know what that means, but it's also an easy decision because your focus is just honoring that human being and what their wishes were. So they were all able to say, yes, take him off the assisted breathing. And I was actually in the car driving on my way to Brisbane, which is about an hour and a half drive for me. So I knew that by the time that I got there, that he would have transitioned already. But when they took him off the assisted breathing, he started breathing. And when I got the phone call to say, well, he's actually breathing on his own, I was like, oh, he's waiting. So he waited. He waited. Um, he waited until the people that needed to be there to exchange with him, to share with him, to be with him, for him to be with them, he waited till they all came. And my sister lives in a different state and couldn't get there until early the next morning. And I went to the airport and picked her up, and I took her to the hospital, into the room where Dad was, and she had 20 minutes. She had 20 minutes that she just outpoured her heart and shared with him. And it was a really wonderful, beautiful experience. And then, because there's an urgency to that, like, I just want to tell you everything that I want to tell you, and so that you know what I feel and what I think about you before you leave. And so that was all in the process of about 20 minutes. And my sister was massaging his hands and massaging his feet. And at the end of that, when that urgency to share had finished, and she'd kind of really shared everything that she had on her mind to share, there was a sense of calmness in the room for a few moments. And I remember it occurred to me, in a conversation where it reaches like not an awkward point, but it's like somebody's just waiting for what to do next or what to say next. That feeling struck me really solid. And I realized, oh, he's waiting now. And I said out loud, you don't have to wait anymore, Dad. Like, we're okay. We're really okay. You don't have to wait anymore. And that was fine. I shared that because that's what I felt like I need to share. And then I looked to my left because one of my kids was there, and I knew that they were going through a really hard time. And I looked over to one of my kids, and that's when I felt him leaving. Like, I literally could feel him like just disassociating and leaving the body, and starting to move out of the room. And as I felt that, I said out loud, oh, he's leaving right now. And then he took one breath, and then the next breath was shorter, and then the next breath was shorter, and then there was the very last breath, and he left. So not only did he wait, and this is the power of us as consciousness beings, not only did he make the decision, I'm staying, I don't like hospitals, but I'm staying, and I'm just going to hang out and wait and see everybody that I need to see. But then also, when he knew that everybody was a-okay, he just was then able to say, "Oh, thanks. Okay, see ya. I'm out of here," and leave so easily. And that's something that I've seen happen a lot. And I totally get it. I totally get it, where you have family members hanging on to that person with every inch of their life, saying, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave, right? So my nan, who was so near and dear to me, I love her to pieces. She was in a room transitioning for a couple of days. She had a really beautiful process, but she had majority of family members hanging on, and I mean hanging on to her toes, hanging on to her fingers, her arms, her every part of her, like, don't leave, Mum, don't leave, Mum, don't leave, Mum, right? But she kept leaving and coming back and sharing information. Like, she'd say, the colors, you've never seen such colors, and you've never seen the birds, and they're birds that we don't have here on this planet. And she would share just the most amazing information with us, because she was already in that process, like a lot of them are, where they leave this plane of consciousness, and they're able to go elsewhere and have other experiences. Now, what happened is, in the middle of the night, one of the nurses came in and said, we need to freshen her up. Can I get you to leave the room? And everyone left the room. And the moment everyone left the room, Nana left, because she could leave while there was no one there saying, don't go, just wait, like this. So it is always really, really incredible to me, the power of our consciousness as human beings. and the individual stories that so many people share with me over the years. And I think it's really amazing that we just have so much to learn and so much more growth to be had here in this area of discussing death and dying. And I want to encourage you that if you have your own stories that you want to share, or if you have any questions that come up because of the topics that we've discussed and you want me to elaborate on something more, or you want me to talk about something specific, then please do that. Either pop it into the comments, or if it's something of a more private nature, put it into an email and send it through to the office, info@jacquiemcintyre.com, and I will get to that next time. Okay, the next video I will bring out next week. So have your questions in over the next few days, please, because I really want to wrap that up and make that our final video that we do in that series. All right. I hope today has been helpful in some ways, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now. Lots of love.